Uy, bakit nga ba mahal na mga Pilipino, karamihan sa atin, si Tatay Digong o si Pangulong Rodrigo Roa Duterte? Bakit maging mga dayuhan ay napapailing na lang kung bakit gano'n na lang natin ipinagtanggol ang dating Pangulo? Ang sagot sa mga katanungang ito ay hinimay-himay ng isang pare, si Father Oliver Kilab SVD, chaplain ng isang Catholic Church dyan sa Switzerland. Si Father Oliver, 30 taon na nanirahan sa Europe. Nagmamasid siya sa kaganapan, pampolitika sa Pilipinas. Sa lawak ng kanyang naging karanasan at obserbasyon, maging siya ay napapatanong, bakit maraming Pilipino ang patuloy na ipinagtatanggol si Tatay Digong kahit kinukundina na ito ng iba't ibang mga nasyon? Para kay Father Oliver, ang sagot ay mas komplikado pa kaysa tinatawag na blind loyalty or misinformation. Isaan niya itong kakatuwang kombinasyon ng psikolohiya, kultura, relihiyon at filosofiya. Una, nakita ng maraming Pilipino kay Tatay Digong ang isang ama. Strikto, kinatatakutan, pero minamahal. Ang estilo ng kanyang pamumuno ay parang isang ama. Masakit magsalita, nagmumura, diretsyo kumangako at ipinatutupad ang batas gamit ang kamay na bakal. Para sa iba, naramdaman nila kay Tatay Digong ang isang ama na gusto nila madisiplina pero marunong magmahal. Walang pakialam sa sasabihin ng iba at higit sa lahat, ang mga ipinangako ay nagkaroon ng resulta. Yung nangako ng 20 pesos kada kilo ng bigas, anyari na. Ikalawa, maraming Pilipino ang hindi na nagtitiwala sa justice system sa bansa. Sabi nga, iba ang pagpapatupad ng batas sa mayaman at mahirap. Nang maupo si Tatay Digong, tinupad niya ang pangakong mabilis na hustisya at wala siyang pakialam sa legal technicalities. Ang kanyang war on drugs ay brutal, pero para sa iba, ito ay epektibo. Para sa isang lipunan na pagod na sa kabi-kabilang krimen, ang pamamaraan ni Tatay Digong ay parang isang shortcut para makamit ang katarungan. Kasi hodang nasagasaan nito ang mga karapatang pantao. Malaki rin ang naging papel ng relihiyon para mahalin ng maraming Pilipino si Tatay Digong. Sa loob kasi ng mahabang panahon, laging ginoglorify ng simbang Katolika ang kapighatian na ang pagpapakasakit ang daan patungo sa paraiso. Pero ang matitigas na mga pulisiya ni Tatay Digong ay nakita ng naghihirap ng sambayanang Pilipino bilang isang instrumento ng divine justice na kailangan ng kamay ng bakal para malinis ang bansang Pilipinas. Hindi nga ba maging ang Panginoong Jesucristo ay tinaob ang mga mesya ng mga nagtitinda sa templo dahil ginagawa anyang bahay kalakalan ang tahanan ng Diyos Ama? Ang malaking suporta sa maraming Pilipino kay Tatay Digong ay hindi nagbumula sa Imperial Manila kundi sa Mindanao. Bilang unang presidente mula sa Mindanao, naging simbolo siya ng kapangyarihan ng mga taga-South. Sa pagiging Pangulo niya, nasasabi na ng mga taga-South na sa wakas, isang Mindanawan ang naluklok sa Malacanang. May mga ngalaga at magpoprotekta sa mga taga-Mindanao. Sa kauna-unahang pagkakataon, sa pagiging Pangulo ni Tatay Digong ay nag-alab ang regional pride ng mga taga-Mindanao at iba pang Pilipino sa labas ng Metro Manila. Hindi rin makakailan na noong panahon ni Tatay Digong talagang mas ligtas ang maglakad sa mga kalye kahit madaling araw na wala ang mga durugista at iba pang tambay dahil sa takot kay Tatay Digong. Para sa mga supporters niya sa kanyang nagiging kampanya laban sa kriminalidad ay mas maraming Pilipino ang nakinabang dahil naging matahimik ang mga lansangan. Opo, ang rason na ito ay medyo may problema. Pero ito ang dahilan kaya ang mga taong ayaw na ayaw rin naman sa karahasan ay natatanggap ito sa ibang konteksto. Hindi dahil ang mga Pilipino ay walang pagpapahalaga sa karapatang pantao, ito po ay dahil mas prioridad natin ang seguridad at katatagan ng pamumuhay na hindi natin makakamtan kung laganap ang kriminalidad at kasamaan. At mapapansin po natin, may mga supporters si Tatay Digong na handa siyang ipaglaban hanggang kamatayan. Bahagi po ito ng psikolohiyang Pilipino. Lalo na kung sila ay ikangay emotionally invested na sa kanilang leader. Nagkaroon na ng kontradiksyon sa pagitan ng kanilang paniniwala at katotohanan. Kaya pag sinabi ng mga kritiko ni Tatay Digong na isa siyang human rights violator, hindi naman agad maniniwala ang kanyang mga supporters na mali ang mga kritiko. Sa halip, para sa kanila, ang mga kritikong ito ay biased. Na bahagi lang ang mga ito ng isang malaking conspiracy para dungisan ang kanyang ligasiya. Kaya, kahit murahin ni Tatay Digong ang Santong Papa at ang Diyos, marami sa kanyang diehard Catholic supporters ang binabaliwala ito. Bakit? Sasabihin lang nila, ganyan naman talaga si Tatay Digong. Maliit na bagay lang ito para sa kanila kumpara sa kanyang mga nagawa para sa bayan. Kahit naging sa philosophical perspective, may katuturan pa rin ang appeal ni Pangulong Digong. Sabi nga ng political philosopher na si Thomas Hobbes, sa isang magulong lipunan, isinusuko ng mga tao ang kanilang kalayaan sa matapang na pinuno para mapanatili ang kapayapaan. Ganito ang nangyari sa Pilipinas noong panahon ni Tatay Digong. Ipinagpalit natin ang maliit na demokrasya para sa mas malaking seguridad. Humahanga naman ang German philosopher na si Friedrich Nietzsche sa mga lider na kayang laktawan ang traditional morality para lang maipatupad ang kanilang vision. Nasa ganitong molde si Pangulong Digong. Hindi niya sinusunod ang mga nakagawian at nakaugalian. At dahil dito, ang naging tingin sa kanya ng kanyang supporters ay simbolo siya ng lakas at hindi isang diktador. Kung unawain natin ang mga taong nagtatanggol at patuloy na sumusuporta kay Tatay Digong, hindi po ang ibig sabihin nito ay sumasang-ayon tayo kumakampi sa kanila. Nire-recognize lang natin na ang kanilang loyalty ay nakatanim sa cultural, psychological, at historical factors at hindi ignorance. Alam niyo mga amigo, matagal pa itong pagdidibatihan ang Duterte's legacy. Pero isang bagay ang malinaw, naghahangad tayong mga Pilipino ng isang malakas na leader. Gusto natin na mabilis na katarungan o hustisya at hindi agad mawawala ang national pride. Ang challenge sa ngayon kung paano natin i-channel ang mga hangaring ito sa hinaharap. Na tayong mga Pilipino ay mas pahahalagahan ang seguridad at demokrasya, lakas at malasakit ng walang buhay na malalakas. Ako naman, Ninyo Bonitong Padilla, lumalaban para sa bayan at yan ang punto ko.
Alright, so let's read this message from Father Oliver Kilab. Okay, trying to understand why many Filipinos defend Duterte even when the world shakes its head. I have spent the last 30 years living in Europe watching the political goings-on in the Philippines from a distance, having witnessed the workings of stable, robust democracies that themselves grapple with their own past of tyranny and right-wing populism. I often find myself wondering, why do so many Filipinos continue to defend Rodrigo Roa Duterte even in the face of international condemnation? The answer is more complex than just blind loyalty or misinformation. It's a curious cocktail of psychology, culture, religion, philosophy. Shaken, not stirred. Daddy issues, in a good way. First, let's talk about Tatay Digong phenomenon. In the Philippines, leadership is often seen through a familial lens. The president isn't just an elected official, he is the nation's father figure. And in Filipino culture, fathers are often strict, no nonsense, and feared, but ultimately loved. Duterte's style fit this mold perfectly. He spoke in blunt, curse-laden speeches, made impossible promises with a straight face, and ruled with an iron fist. To many, he felt like the father they wished they had, one who disciplines with tough love, takes no nonsense, and delivers results, or at least appears to. Justice delayed is justice denied. Filipinos have long distrusted the justice system. Court cases take decades, corruption runs deep, and many believe that only the rich and powerful ever see justice served. Enter Duterte, a man who promised swift action with no regard for legal technicalities. The infamous war on drugs, brutal. Yes, but to many, it was effective. Whether or not the numbers tell the same story is another matter. But perception is powerful. For a society exhausted by crime, Duterte's method felt like a shortcut to justice, even if that shortcut happened to bulldoze human rights along the way. The Filipino love for suffering and sacrifice. Religion also plays a role. Filipino Catholicism has a long history of glorifying suffering. There's an ingrained belief that hardship purifies and discipline, no matter how painful, is necessary for redemption. Duterte, with his brutal policies, was seen by some as an instrument of divine justice. The idea that a tough, unyielding hand is required to cleanse the nations aligns with certain religious narratives. After all, wasn't Jesus harsh when flipping tables in the temple? The paternalistic structure of the Catholic Church. Another key factor in shaping the Filipino mindset is the paternalistic structure of the Catholic Church, which has deeply influenced the nation for centuries. The Church in the Philippines has traditionally mirrored a hierarchical top-down system where obedience to authority, whether religious or political, is expected. The contrast sharply with Protestant majority countries, where the Reformation encouraged decentralized church structures, personal responsibility, and early democratic governance. In places like Germany, the Netherlands, and Scandinavia, Protestant traditions helped foster civic engagement, participatory decision making, and checks on absolute power. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, the centuries-old deference to clerical authority translated easily into political life, and reinforcing a culture that favors strong, fatherly leaders over democratic participatory system. This ingrained tendency to look up to a powerful figure for guidance and protection, whether a Spanish friar in the colonial era, a local bishop, or tough-talking president, has made many Filipinos more accepting of authoritarian leadership. The idea of questioning authority, so central to Protestant-influenced democracies, is less ingrained in Filipino culture, where compliance and submission to hierarchy remain deeply rooted. Resentment of Imperial Manila and regional bias. Another often looked factor in Duterte's enduring support is the deep-seated resentment of Imperial Manila for long-standing dominance of the capital and the north over the rest of the country, particularly Mindanao. For decades, from the south have felt marginalized, ignored, and even looked down upon by Manila-based politicians, media, and institutions. Duterte, the first president from Mindanao, was seen as a long overdue symbol of empowerment for the region. His presidency was a way for Mindanaoans to say, finally, one of us is in charge. To his supporters from the South, criticisms from Manila-based elites and foreign observers often felt less like legitimate concern and more like condescending attacks from those who had never cared about Mindanao before. The strong regional pride and historical neglect played significant role in the unwavering loyalty of many Filipinos, particularly outside Metro Manila. Ulita, utilitarianism, the ends justify the means. Then there's a practical argument. If the streets feel safer, who cares how it's done? This is a classic case of utilitarian thinking, where people justify harsh actions if they believe the results benefit the majority. Duterte supporters argue that sacrificing a few, like drug users, criminals, for the good of the many law-abiding citizens is a fair trade. Of course, this reasoning is problematic, but it explains why people who normally oppose violence can accept it in certain contexts. It's not that Filipinos don't value human rights. It's just that they often prioritize security and stability more. Cognitive dissonance, defend to the death. Here's where psychology kicks in. When people emotionally invest in a leader, they experience cognitive dissonance, that uncomfortable feeling when reality contradicts their beliefs. Instead of admitting may have been wrong, many will double down, rationalizing or dismissing evidence that conflicts with their worldview. So when critics point out Duterte's human rights violations, his supporters don't necessarily believe the critics are wrong. They just believe they're biased. Or worse, part of some grand conspiracy to tarnish his legacy. Even Duterte cursed the Pope or made blasphemous remarks about God. Many of his die-hard Catholic supporters ignored or rationalized these statements. Some justified it as just Duterte being Duterte, while others dismiss it as a small price to pay for what they saw as a strong, effective leader. The same Filipinos who would normally react to outrage to such remarks from anyone else suddenly found themselves excusing or even defending them. If cognitive dissonance had a national headquarters, it might just be in Duterte's fan base. Nietzsche, Hobbes, and the Filipino experience. Even from the philosophical perspective, Duterte's appeal makes sense. Political philosopher Thomas Hobbes argued that in chaotic societies, people willingly surrender some freedoms to a strong ruler, Leviathan, to maintain order. That's exactly what many Filipinos felt they were doing, trading a little democracy for a lot of security. And then there's Nietzsche, who admired the idea of a leader who transcends traditional morality to impose their vision. Duterte certainly fit the mold. He refused to play by the usual rules, and his followers saw that as a sign of strength and not a tyranny. Looking at the Philippines from Europe. Living in Europe for 3 decades has given me a different perspective of governance and democracy. Countries like Germany, France, and Italy have all struggled with their own authoritarian pasts. Whether in the form of fascism, monarchies, or military rule. Yet today, there are examples of robust functioning democracies that, while imperfect, provide a level of accountability and protection of human rights that the Philippines still struggles with. Ironically, Europe is not immune to the same right-wing populist tendencies that brought Duterte to power. Figures like Viktor Orban in Hungary and Marine Le Pen in France echo the same tough rhetoric appealing to people's fears and frustrations. The difference, however, is that European democracies have stronger institutions, an independent press, and a judiciary that keeps leaders in check. In the Philippines, these safeguards are weaker, making populist strongmen even more dangerous. What now? Understanding why people defend Duterte doesn't mean agreeing with them. It simply means recognizing that their loyalty is rooted in cultural, psychological, and historical factors, not just ignorance. Duterte's legacy will be debated for years, but one thing is clear. The Filipino desire for strong leadership, swift justice, and national pride is not going away anytime soon. The challenge now is to channel those desires into a future that values both security and democracy, strength and compassion, and maybe, just maybe, find a leader who doesn't require a body to earn respect. Alright, so napakaganda po ng isinulat na ito ni Father Oliver Kilab SVD. So panoorin nyo na lamang po o kaya basahin po ninyo para mas maintindihan po ninyong mabuti kung ano po ang nais ipahiwatig at sabihin ni Father Oliver Kilab sa milyong-milyong mga Pilipino. Whether you are supporters of Duterte or supporters of BBM.